I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Hannah and Associates to this first edition of Real Talk with Executive Diamonds. Yes, it's the very first edition, and we all are so excited. I'd like to welcome all 26 ladies right here now. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. So we'd like to get into it. Our guest today is loaded with experience. I mean, when I say loaded, I mean loaded to the teeth, like they would say. What I have here says she's a corporate executive leading multicultural teams across Africa. She's a certified coach. She's an author. She's also some person who has worked career history across financial, aviation, telecom services. I mean, who in heaven's name is this person? I tell you honestly, it's going to be a very interesting conversation because the essence of this meeting is for us to hear how she has been able to achieve everything that I have said here and even much more. What she has done here is try to make it concise. So it's not too loaded, really. But I tell you honestly, this person we have with us this evening is extremely loaded. She's somebody I have always admired for her humility. I mean, she's quite tall. Nkiru is tall, and she is always very elegant in her heels. But the first time I met this person before I bring her on, I saw her kneel down. And when I say kneel down, I mean go down on her knees to say hello to a very good friend of mine, Omomi Agunbiade. And I had to turn and I looked at elegance on her knees. And I'm like, do people still do things like this? But then over the years, every time I see her, I still see her do that. And so I said to myself, this is amazing. This person is amazing. So I'd like you all very quickly to be a fantastic time out to join me this evening as we welcome to the room Nkiru Olumide-Ojo. Welcome, Nkiru.
Thank you. Unfortunately, she got knocked out. She's coming back in a minute. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll just hold on.
Yes,
God, please don't knock me out.
Oh, I know.
We really would always pray for those things, really. We pray against technical glitches. So she'll be back shortly, really. We'll just hold on. While we're waiting, can you just tell us where you're watching from, where you're joining from? My name is BC. I'm joining from Lagos. So can I just have your names in the chat room? Just tell us who you are and where you're joining from. Adepeju, where you're joining from. Binke, where you're joining from. Iberi, I see you somewhere there. Where are you joining from? Just tell us your name and where you're joining from as we wait for Nkiru. Oh, she's back. Okay. Good evening, Nkiru.
Good evening, Sis BC. Very lovely to see you. I could see myself earlier, but I feel like we're struggling now.
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, that's fine. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock off completely. You will hold the audience. I'd restart my system and rejoin. It was easier earlier on. I'm not sure what's happened because I could see Sis Hannah when I got on. So I'll shut off my system completely and then I'll join. It will allow you time for some pep talk. So see you shortly.
Okay, then that's fine. So we'll wait for him to join us. Could you just tell me what your name is and where you're watching from? I'd like to read that out very quickly. What's your name and where you're watching from? Okay. I'm waiting. Modupe from Lagos. Thank you for joining us, Modupe. So good to have you here. Your name is Hannah. Hannah, thank you for joining us from Lagos. Okay, can we have your name where you're joining from? Sheyi from also. Catherine from Lagos. Adepeju from Ogba, Lagos. It seems like everybody's watching from Lagos. Can we have your name, please? Let's go on. My name is Olabisi. I'm watching from Lagos. Okay, I'm joining from Lagos. Okay, Iberi from Lagos as well. Omotayo, presently joining from Ibadan. Ah, is that where you're voting from, Sister Omotayo? Priscilla Imade from the UK. Thank you for joining us, Priscilla. Today from Ajuwon, August. You're welcome. Esther from Lagos. Adiola from okay. Can we have 2 people on call? Okay, let's go on. Bus from Lagos. So Sonayo from UK. Inka from US. From Lagos. Adiola from Port Harcourt. Ah, it's so good to have you here. Let's go on. Can we just go on your name and where you're watching from, where you're joining us from? Okay, so we have from Port Harcourt, we have from Ogun State, we have from the UK, we have from the US, we have. Yes, so let's go on. Okay, another person, Amina Mutraya from Ogun State, and Yolamaya. I think Ogun State is beginning to knock Lagos State out now. Okay, let's go on. I think we're having more from Ogun State than from Lagos now. Okay, we have one from the US, we have one from the UK. Uzoma from Lagos. Keep it coming. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. As we wait on Nkiru to join us, you're welcome. Okay, let's go on. Uzoma from Lagos. Okay. Has Nkiru been able to join?
Yes, but her video isn't on yet.
Okay, she's back. Okay.
Not yet. Her video hasn't come on yet.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so I'd just like to ask a question.
Please just give me a few minutes. I've logged on my device, on my handset, but I'm trying to log on my computer. It's much easier. But I can hear you. Please carry on, sis.
Okay, so should we go on then? Can we start? It would just be nice to see your lovely before we start off.
Thank you, Bisi. I think that's better. The ladies want to say the cutie.
Happy, sis.
So she's.
I'm just connecting. I'm not sure why. I've been on for 15 minutes nonstop, so I'm not sure why.
It happens. Okay. Okay, so we have Monisala Folonshaw joining us from Yaba, Lagos. Okay. Okay, so we have more people here from Lagos, as it were. While we wait for Nkiru, I would just like to ask a question. What are your expectations from this meeting? Why did you join us? Why are you here? What are you expecting to take away from this meeting? Would you like to share? Is anybody here who would like to share? What are your expectations from this meeting tonight? I'd like to hear you. I'd like to hear how Nkiru has been able to navigate her life, balancing being a wife, a mother, and being able to achieve as much as she has done. I'd like to know that really. I'm really interested. So what are your expectations? I'd like to hear you. Would you like to go to the chat room to let us know? I'm waiting. Okay, you know what to learn from Nkiru's lovely life and all the challenges she's been through. Oh, look at you, sunshine. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Logging from my laptop, but it's okay, we can carry on.
Oh, that's fine. We can hear you and we can see your lovely face. You're welcome, Nkiru. You really are welcome. So we have expectations. People would like to know, to listen to how your lovely life has been so well packaged and also to learn the challenges you've been through. So I've given some short intro concerning you. I'd just like to read this again. I don't know if you were in the room when I read it earlier. And so you are our guest today, Nkiru Olumide, and you're loaded with experience. You're a corporate executive leading multicultural teams across Africa. You're a certified coach. You're an author. You also have career history across financial, aviation, and telecom services. So join me this evening as I welcome Nkiru Olumide-Ojo. Good evening, Nkiru. How are you?
I'm all great. Thank you, Sis Bisi. It's a true pleasure and honor to be here. I think
most appropriate. Just bear with me, I've not been on this, so I'm just going to tell you.
So the
echo.
Okay.
Got it. Cool. So thank you, Ms. Bisi. It's a true pleasure and honor to be here. I think it's really important to start with saying big thanks to Big Sis Anna for having me. For everyone who is joining and listening, you know, I said on my Instagram page that your life may be busy, but when your big sisters call you, you just arise and make it work. They're my big sisters in faith, also big sisters in my line or chosen path of career. For a long time when I was starting out, we would hear, Hannah Evanjo, Hannah Evanjo, Hannah Evanjo. And, you know, it was then a pleasure to meet her, not just in the marketplace, but also at church. So it's a true pleasure and honor to be here. And I'm more than happy, to share a few nuggets. I'm not sure what format you'd like us to start with. If you'd like me to maybe tell a brief summary, a brief story, and then we can go into the Q&As, or we can start directly with the Q&As. They would also bring the stories.
So that's brilliant. So what I want us to start with is just tell us who is Nkiru Olumide-Ojo, and then we'll take it from there. So I know as you go on from there, other things would evolve and then the conversation would go on. So who are you really? Who is Nkiru Olumide-Ojo? Okay.
Happy. So first, a child of God. In my faith, we say the daughter of Zion. So I'm first a child of God, then I'm Olumide's wife. I'm Grace Ifeanyiwa and Steve Omoro-Diongoko's daughter. My mother is Igbo. My father is Edo, or was Edo, because he's late now. So I'm a mom, wife, sibling to two sisters. I've got two boys. I've been in the marketplace for over 20 years, probably 22 or 23. I've worked across various sectors, doing or looking after multinational and national brands. I love social impact, anything that can make a difference in someone's life. And I think an outcome of that is that I have my hands in more than a few pies, looking to provide social impact in whatever way I can, whether it's in my church, at work, just generally everywhere that I find myself.
Thank you very much, Nkiru. I'm going to come back to that. I hear a lot of church. And so we're going to be asking you questions on how you've been able to balance, do what you do, and so also remain in the faith. But let me start with this. And then that would, like I said, would help navigate the conversation. So I'm asking, how were you able to build resilience as a working woman with so much to contend with? Because I look at you, the first time I saw you, Nkiru, you struck me as a very fragile person. I'm like, God, she's so fragile. And then I saw you on your heels and the way you carried yourself. I'm like, but then I've watched you over time, over the years, and I see you have really grown in what you do and everything. How have you been able to build the resilience that has helped you just stay in power? What has it been? How?
So I'm really grinning when you say that you've always thought of me as fragile. Maybe it's the size of me because I've always been slim, but I don't think fragile is one of the words, they'll use to describe me, growing up. And I think one of the things I have to say was when I was growing up, my immediate older sister was more quiet, but very deep. And I was quite boisterous. And, sometimes, as we say in Nigeria, she would needle me. As we say in our local parlance, she would look for my trouble. And my mom wouldn't even want to know who looks for the trouble. She would just start shouting, Nkiru, the noise is a lot in this house. So I think safe to say that fragile is a very curious adjective. But I mean, I like the question on resilience, and it's such a pertinent question. Interestingly, I have an IG Live. I haven't done one in weeks or months, that I'm going to be talking squarely about resilience, and only because I think that resilience is such an underlooked but key factor, to being successful in life. I think I've always had the mantra that life is a series of battles and blessings. And that's how life comes. Sometimes they come in duos, sometimes they come one at a time. And I think that if life is a series of battle and blessings, what it means is you've got to build resilience before the battles come and before the blessings come. I think people think that the resilience is important only for the battles, but resilience is also important even for the blessings, because there are blessings that you encounter that if you don't have the shoulder to deal with, they sweep you away. And there are a few things and a few principles I'd like to lay out with regards to building resilience. The first is you've got to find your source. What is your source? And what is that higher being? I think for me it's quite clear that mine is the Lord Jesus Almighty, but you must find what your own source is. And it's your source, because life is a series of battles and blessings. It is your source that allows you borrow your head, on his laps in the times that life is unkind and the times that life is fierce. And the picture that I have always is when my life is hectic, I feel like I go to the laps of the thighs of my own higher being, and I just put my head, because, life has been tough. So I think the first thing I'll say is find your own source. The second thing I'll say around building resilience is you've got to keep your wall of accolades nearby. And by your wall of accolades, I really mean all of those flowers, all of those rosettes, all of those things that you got, in the course and in the journey of your life. Because when the battles and the blessings come, the tendency is that you forget, your accolades, you forget the cheers that you've had. But if you have a wall of accolades, constantly, then you see your stars and then you remember who you are. I think, it's important to also find someone who is both in your circle and in your corner. That's very critical, because sometimes you find people who are in your circle who are not in your corner. And, I think that, having a good sense of judgment is very important, as you build resilience. And, by the good sense of judgment, is understanding, I'd made the comment about who is in your corner, I'd made the comment about what must I do? What is okay to tell? What is not, okay to tell? And I think is build yourself up. People think that, that size and breadth is just miraculous. It's, there's a process that comes with it. And the process is in the building, is in the strengthening. And I always go back, and I know this is an interdenominational session and not peculiar to anyone, but I go back to say that the things that you have built, the audios, the tapes, the messages that you have listened, they come to support you, when the battles and the blessings come. My scripture says that the Holy Spirit will bring to your remembrance those circumstances, those situations, those words, and they help you to form like a basket that doesn't allow you, fall through the ground. And I think that, one of the things that I want to say is, after you have done a lot of these things, you've got to rest, on your higher being. You've got to rest in Christ. And I remember when I had a storm, a really huge storm I had at work. And it was such a huge storm. And I remember, being in the car, and I was driving from one of my office campuses to the other. And, I had prayed, I had fasted, I had asked someone, I had sought legal opinion. The head of legal was my close friend. It was a huge error that had money. And, as I was going in the car crossing, and I was just thinking, what more can I do? And I really felt the impression of rest. Find a place of rest, and to build resilience, you've got to imagine the worst case scenario, then you rest. Like, what is the worst case scenario? Somebody slaps you. What's the worst case scenario? You lose what you're holding. What's the worst? Once you can imagine that, you rest, because you cannot give something to your higher being. You cannot give something to, and for me, my higher being is God Almighty, then you take it back and hold it. So to build resilience, you must rest. in the package that you've given, the Lord. I've got 2 more points, but I'll pass and allow you ask any further questions.
If I heard you correctly right now, a lot of us, what we do is we find our source, but we hardly ever rest in the source. So what you told us this evening is that it's not just enough for me to find my source, whoever the higher being is in your case, right? But there's also a need for us to trust in him. It is in the place of trust that you're able to find rest. So they're 2 different things exactly here. Nkiru?
Yes. So I think it's find your source. And the reason I keep emphasizing on source is the world is hectic, and sometimes the people that you run to are also overwhelmed because they're humans. And therefore, it presupposes that you need a higher being, to bring you that comfort, to bring you that rest, to bring you that grace, to carry on. And because I don't want to be all spiritual, I talked about building your wall of accolades, because and I like it because it makes me remember, and I don't know people who are here who had children when I did, which is 18, 16, 15 years ago. We had something that said the itsy bitsy spider went up the waterfalls. It's Bunny. Down came the rain and washed the spider down. Out came the sun and dried the spider out. And the itsy. So the point I'm making is, yes, you remember the itsy bitsy spider. You need your wall of accolades so that when the sun comes, the rain comes and beats you, the sun comes and dries you up. You remember your medals are there. Your medal says you were once the best runner. You were once the best Miss South Africa. You were once, those are the medals, that reinforce your old wins, that reinforce who you are. And then I also talked about finding people in your corner, in your circle who are in your corner, and improving your sense of judgment and listening, to messages, things that build you up, because those are the things that come and serve as a basket when the heat is high. I'll stop there, sis.
Okay, so listening to you now, I'd like to ask you here, because it's like, what skills would be required for one to thrive in the workplace? I mean, looking at this now, a lot of times people ask those questions. Okay, if I know the skills that's required of me, I'll be able to thrive. What are the skills Nkiru had to deploy for her to have gone this far, for her to have grown this much? And are there particular skills that are laid out, or do I have to depend on what it is, my innate abilities? What would you tell us here?
Look, I think the first thing is that talent is never enough. And I know that John Maxwell has a book that reinforces that talent is not enough. So I think you first need your talents to get through the door, but the highest skill I'm going to leave you with is people skills. Phenomenal skill that you need to push, maintain, not just walk through the door, but maintain and grow. And what comes under people skills? Communication, ability to get along with people, ability to collaborate. We need to improve our collaborative skills, and sometimes I say that it may not necessarily be, and actually I think everyone should learn collaboration, and I'll explain why. When you are starting out in life, you are a star, you are a single star, they're clapping for you. Ostabisi was first in mathematics, back then they're clapping for you. 2-1 in blah, 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 they're clapping for you. When you get to the workplace, they're not looking for star performance. They're looking for collaborative performance. I hold your hands, you hold my hands, we hold Anna's hands, and we rise. So understanding how to collaborate is a very important skill. And the last skill I'd like to leave people with is managing people. And I'm going to bring in emotional intelligence in there. And what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is you having a high sense of self-awareness of yourself, you understanding the emotions of different people, and you sitting down and understanding how to use that to succeed at work. I hammer on this because these were skills that I struggled with, and so it's easier for me to speak about them. Emotional intelligence is something that I wish I had deliberately learned and not learned them out of examples or circumstantially. I wish I had been proactive, in learning this.
Can I hold you there? Can you give us an example of an instance, from what you've said here, you had to learn on the job or thereabout? Can you give us maybe one of the instances that maybe you blew it, some blunder, and then you wish? Just give us one example so we can relate.
Yes. So look, I came and I speak about this openly. I was born in Port Harcourt and raised in Port Harcourt. I think if nothing else, you realize if you're born in Port Harcourt, we are wired to be outspoken. Absolutely. And very outspoken. And sometimes when you're outspoken, you forget to read the room. You forget to pick the room and understand who is there, what is the tonality. And there could be things as basic as somebody's making a presentation. It's a big, because I started out early and I was in executive committees very early. And, someone is making a presentation and she says, 1 + 1 is 5. I'm saying, no, you've got to be kidding me. Did you pass by? Are you joking? 1 + 1 is always 2. What are you funny? So, it was, and what you do is you rub people wrongly, you rub them up wrongly, and people spend time, instead of helping you, when you are in a bind, they want to trip you up. They want to expose you as well. Then you create enmity. And, people would say, I just want to be sincere. Me, I'm very sincere. I speak my mind. You can be sincere. You can be sincerely wrong. So emotional intelligence is so important. And it's down to the little details of, as an example, if Sis Anna was my boss, I had a boss who, I would send thoughts and ideas to her, she will reject it. Hey? I would send thoughts and ideas to her, she rejects it. I said, what type of, is anything personal? In fact, I used to go home and I'll tell my husband, I'll be like, my boss doesn't like me. My husband will laugh. He will say to me, of all the problems your boss has in this life, you think you are the one? You don't have your time, you're very busy. Get on with your life. And I realized that I wasn't emotional intelligent enough to understand that my boss was orientated as a risk professional first. And what tends to happen is when you bring any idea to a risk professional, they look at it first from the lens of a risk professional. Where are the loopholes? So once those ideas come without those risk loops being closed, those thoughts fall off. I actually had to go all the way to Watson, UPenn, to go for a course called the Art and Science of Selling Ideas. So I then learned that every time I brought her ideas, I had to put myself in her perspective. All she was doing was looking for the loopholes. And therefore I closed the loopholes before I came to her. And guess what? My ideas were flying 1 million times over. In fact, I was on vacation once. They had an idea they brought to her. She said, please, can they call Nkiru? I want her to. I'm like, really? You used to throw away all my ideas? Wow. So emotional intelligence is really important.
Okay, you said something about collaboration as one of the skills that would be needed, really. Well, why do you think, because I'm saying this because we're mostly women on this call. Why do you think as women we have problems with that, collaborating with other people? Why do you think that is?
So there is a theory I had once read, and it was the Queen Bee theory. And it was theories around when there are similar women on the same ladder, there tends to be, studying the bee, there tends to be, what's the word? There tends to be, and I'm trying to choose the adjective carefully, maybe irritation or a struggle for self-preservation, a bit more competitiveness. Yes. And what that does for you is once you get into competitive mode, you lose the collaborative mode. And if you are not self-aware enough, and that's why when people say, oh, women supporting women, I say only self-aware women support women. A woman who's not self-aware is not able to support another woman. So if you are conscious and you are aware that collaboration may not easily come to you very quickly, then you know exactly what to do. You know exactly how to be self-aware, to be deliberate about collaborating. sometimes I have a good laugh when I think about one of the ladies I worked with. We had worked, earlier on, we had started, she had an A personality, I had an A personality. We couldn't sit in a meeting peacefully. Everything was about attacking each other. I used to spend time preparing for my meeting because I knew she would attack me in the meeting. And she would spend time, I'm sure, preparing. It was a waste of time. Imagine if we decided, okay, we'll be allies. Our two A+ personalities, we could have combined it and we'll be A+++. Imagine how formidable a team would be. So I think those are the sorts of things. Be self-aware so that you can collaborate better.
I like that. I like what you said there. There's some program I attended, and somebody said, for us to thrive in life, we have to learn how to modulate our strengths. And that's what a lot of us do not know how to do. Some of us, like you said, that's the way I was born. I'm from this part of the world. That's the way we talk. I'm a very blunt person. And I got to learn that even those strengths, right? But once it is that you put people off, you rub off almost everybody off the wrong way, then that means there's something wrong with you. And so you need to learn to modulate your strength in a way that you don't come across as being offensive to people. So I like
there you go.
I heard you say something about your husband. Let's bring it close to home now. You said you're married, you're Igbo Delta, married
Yes.
to a Yoruba man.
Yes.
How have you been able to cope? I mean, like tribe different. They're speaking Yoruba. What happened? How did you meet your husband? Let's start from there. Why did Port Harcourt girl marry the Yoruba man? How come? How did that happen?
So I met my husband, interestingly, and my children think it's a really boring story. I met my husband in believers class in church.
Oh. We
were in the same believers class, and I had just given my life to Christ. He was in class, and he used to sit in front. My husband is an Efiko, and we had a very strict teacher, so he would get all the pass marks. He will come first. And I just thought, I can't stand all these Efiko people now. Before they call the Bible passage, who are you? So I sat at the back, with my friends, abusing him and, just generally thinking, what's all this? And so one day he says, I knew, but honestly, I didn't know. He was holding a book. And I said, what book is this? I liked reading, at the time. So I said, what book is this? And, he told me the book, and, he became friends with my friends who were laughing, who were my cohorts in laughing at him. And then we now realize that so that we don't fail, we better become friends with these Efikos. And, with becoming friends with the Efikos, one thing led to the other. And, we ended up dating and then, getting married. And I think when I was marrying, my older sister had married a Yoruba person first. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of battle. My parents had struggled, and there was a lot of battle. So I kind of knew that because my sister had gone ahead of me, when it was my turn, they'll be like, we've done this before, okay, just be going. So indeed, it was easier. And then I suppose because ours was faith-based, my parents kind of felt a bit more comfortable. I think that my husband's family were quite generous with accepting me. I remember something that happened to me many, many years ago. And obviously you won't believe that I only realized, what it was a few years ago. I had gone to my mother-in-law's office in Alausa. When I got married, she had worked for many years. And I had come to say hello to her. I'd walked, maybe I was in Ikeja, so I went to say hello to her and her friend. And, her friend kept saying, do you want to eat? And I kept saying, I don't want to eat. So she kept saying, Shesijanwa, I said, yes, I'm eating, ma. Oh, but you have to eat this rice. I said, I don't want to eat. And then my mother-in-law said, don't worry, don't leave her. If she wants to eat, she'll eat. She normally says it as it is. So I thought, years later, maybe it will be disrespectful to say no to an elder who is offering you. It didn't even occur to me that they were, I said, I'm eating now. Why are you forcing me to eat? So I think that my husband's family were quite generous to me, very accepting, and I think I just settled in with a few principles. So anyone who's Yoruba on this call, Yoruba people love respect. That's how they're wired. And look, it didn't matter where I met my mother-in-law, whether I was JFK or it was Heathrow, you know, I'd kneel down with both knees for her sisters to, what was important to her, I thought it was important to do. And she's very minimalist, there wasn't a lot. So I think that I have been blessed, and they're quite upfront. My mother-in-law is Ondo, so she's not happy with something, she would say. They've been quite an easy, I think I've been blessed. They've been a very easy and accommodating family, because I'm sure I'm not an angel, having said that.
But you're an interesting person. I said that earlier when we started off. I mean, maybe it was when you were knocked off. I said the first time I met you through a mommy who's a very close friend of mine, a dear friend of mine. And what shocked me about you was you walked towards her, and the next thing I saw this Igbo girl, she just went down on her knees, and I'm like, this tall girl, it was sweet, it was effortless. And I'm like, even me, I struggled to kneel down. The way you just did it, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. But the point is, over the years, every time I met you anywhere, it was just so easy. It came easily to you. So I think I now understand, really. You're so used to kneeling down for everybody. So it's just like a big deal. You learned the art and you perfected it quite well, I must say.
Yes, and I worry when people, because when young people get married, they come to, or are getting married, you know, they'll say to me, I'm marrying into this tribe. I don't do that. Where we come from, we don't do that. And I'm thinking, but if you want to marry someone, you know, it's like Ruth and Naomi, you know, your people will be my people. And if your people are my people, as long as the cultures are not offensive to your faith, offensive to your personal belief, what is the problem? What is the problem? And I see a lot of comments that makes me feel that increasingly, and I say that with all due respect, people are lacking in home training. I hear people talk about, so I went to their house and I sat down. I struggle with this. I struggle with, if you've gone to a place, why can't you support? Why can't you help? What's the big deal? My husband's uncle, every family wedding we have, when I say I'm old, I don't mean like I'm a mama by age, but my husband is the first son and I'm the first wife. He never leaves any party or function without calling me and putting money in my hands. Why? Because when I step into the function, it has to be organized, and I don't care whose function it is. I go in and I'm thinking, what needs to be done here? Let's get it done. And it's just simple. You know, I just think we tend to complicate things and think about, oh, it's not respectful. Then they'll say, I'm a slave. You've got to have more self-worth than that, I think.
And then what happens at the end of the day is we now return and we say, my in-laws are terrible people, without exactly examining yourself and asking yourself how you've been able to do this. Okay, Nkiru, you've done quite well. I mean, amazing. But I'd like to ask you, how do you balance home? You have 2 boys, right? You said they're in their late teens or they're out of their teens. How have you been able to balance school, work, travels? Because I know you travel a lot, even before now, right? So how are you able to balance that? Someone says she's here to hear how Nkiru has been able to do the work-life balance. First, I'd like to ask Nkiru, is there anything like work-life balance? Is there? If there is, how have you been able to manage this?
So I think this is a question that always comes up, and it's a very important question, and it's a question that led me to write my book, The Pressure Cooker. For a lot of times, I used to think that I lived in a pressure cooker. So it's a question that I'm quite happy to speak about. Look, I think the first thing to know is that work-life balance is not linear. I think people, when they think about work-life balance, they think about balancing on a bicycle. I think I'd rather have you think about riding a bicycle. Sometimes the angle is 80-20, is 60-40, is 40-60. You know, I'd rather think about it like that. And what does that mean? It means that at different times, some things would be out of balance. Maybe the home is out of balance, and I speak quite frankly. For a while, maybe the work is out of balance for a while. But the truth is, it's never been my experience that the pedal is at 50-50. People would say, you are juggling. And I say, yes, think about a juggler, you know, that you will see in the city square. what you want to do is you don't want the wrong bottles to fall. So he's juggling, and I have a bottle of water. He's juggling, juggling, juggling. You just don't want the wrong bottles to fall. But will the bottles fall? Yes, the bottles will fall. I remember in those days when I used to travel a lot. I worked in, my children are 15 and 18. We used to do pick up and drop off. Maybe my husband, when we married, he was working in Nestle, I was working in Virgin Atlantic. I used to travel more than him. His travels were perhaps regional in the West, and I would do a lot of international trips. Fast forward, my children became toddlers, and I would go into school to see my children, and the teacher would say, Mrs. Olumide-Ojo, oh, girl, welcome. It's so good to see you. Obviously, what she's saying is,
where have you been? Run away, mother.
Where have you been? In the beginning, I used to feel guilty, and it was actually at Deso, I remember because our children were in the same school at the time. And I was talking to her, and she was saying to me, you've got to find what is important. And that brought me to a place of rest. And so I realized that I could miss PTA, and I'm not saying people on this call should miss PTA. I could miss the big PTA, but I wouldn't miss parent conferencing. I wouldn't miss, performances where the children are performing. Sometimes I did, but I think that partnership is important. And I remember my second son, he also, by the time I started explaining to him, you know how they say number 2 is the one that suffers. By the time I started explaining to him, he would say, we have sports on Thursday, but I'm not running, so I really don't think you should bother. I'm like, good boy, you now know. And so I began to learn how to spend quality versus quantity time with the children. Now, one last example that allowed me be a bit more comfortable. In my son's school, they had a performance, and in the performance, you were supposed to demonstrate, what your mom, is. And one of the children said, off his stay-at-home mom, I've closed this door. Don't come here. Don't knock on my door the whole day. Don't even come here. And I left off thinking, oh, right, maybe the same time that she uses to shut off and say, don't come here, I've got to think about that. That's my time in the office. And the time when she opens her door and comes out, that's my own time when I've come back from work. So I think just finding those balances, and obviously you apply a few tricks. When my children got older, I would, if I arrived on a trip or I'm on leave, I would take them to school and I'll tell them that today is, my first son's name is Benileke, the second one is Olaoluwa. I'll say today is Olaoluwa's day. He'll say, what does that mean, mommy? I say, it's just a day for you and I. I pick him from school, I take him to one eat in the restaurant, I drop him back. If he's changing for lesson, I sit with him, and he just feels so important. I know that children should feel important every day, but this is my own, and I deal quality, I beg your pardon, versus quantity. I'll hand over to you, Sis.
So what about support? What kind of support did you have? For you not to be there must have been people in the house helping out in places where you couldn't exactly. So what kind of support? Because I hear some people who would say things like, my husband doesn't want a maid. My husband doesn't. So how can we now? And so at the end of the day, you find such people just checking their career because they want their children to grow first. And this builds a lot of resentment, and they begin to hate their spouses. So what would you say to that?
So there are two things. One, I will tell you a story at the end of it. Two stories, actually. But I think first is, I'm always so intrigued when I find career women with weird hang-ups. So I see career women that say, I can't leave my house. My mother-in-law, I don't get along with her. She's not, I'm not. And I'm thinking, but you've already lost a solid support. Do you think that your domestic staff will be kinder to your child and your mother-in-law whose child's child it is? You've got to think about it. I had no time to quarrel with anybody because in my brain, I'm already calculating, I'm going to New York tomorrow. I have to beg her, let her not go to work. to come and stay before I beg my mother and balance it. So I had no energy for hang-up. And I find people who say, I don't want people in my house. I'm thinking, well, if you can manage without having people in your house. I knew that I wanted to be a career girl. I knew that I did not have the luxury for hang-ups. So I killed all the hang-ups, before. And I also think people, where you can, let your money work for you. I remember going to speak in an organization I worked in. It was International Women's Day, and they had called me to speak. And I had told them, somebody had asked me, how do I make it work? And I told them, I said, there's some things for which you can fuss about, and there's some things that you cannot fuss about. And I said to them, you have to think about it. A foriro is easier to make and quickly than to make moi moi from the scratch. And I said to them, I find moi moi such a pleaser that I don't know that people eat and they say, who made this moi moi? I find moi moi takes the taste of everyone. So you have got to decide where you spend your energy on. Is it rustling up quick that your husband may be able to differentiate this, or making moi moi? You order the moi moi. You find somebody that makes moi moi. You order 24. They deliver it to your office. You take it back to the house. You put it in the freezer. Moi moi. You bring it out. You warm it. Everybody eats moi moi. So at the time I had Nkiru fish seller. I phoned the woman. I say, Madam, I'm coming to buy fish. Buy alum next door. Wash it. If I just do pam pam and I flash you, let it be all washed and packed. My only role is to drop it into the pots. And I used to tell my domestic staff, I said, what can you cook? Please, which one can you cook so that my life is easier? And I would find the balance, I would order, I will mix, match. But when I said it's one of the ladies, hands up, and she said, Ma, except you really don't know how to cook moi moi, but moi moi tastes, there are some unique tastes. I say, okay, my dear, you are right. Maybe you want to be going from Ikejajari to Egeda. You will grind beans, you will wash it, you will, by the time you finish cooking it, it's 10 p.m. You'll be old, you will have wrinkles.
Yeah.
The man that you're making the moi moi from will be looking like a bubble. If you like, don't help yourself. I can't do anything about it. I've said my own. So I think people should let their monies work for them where you can. And one of the few things I used to do about my children was I would buy uniforms for every day because I didn't want any story. Let's just have uniform for every day. And whether it means I wasn't buying one Vivon or buying one bag, so that I would do anything because this is my work. It must go on right. So those were the few subtle things, that I could do.
Okay, so I like that. What you've just said reminds me of a very good friend of mine. And her husband is one who is for fresh food. Those kind of men that say every soup he eats every day must be fresh. She said to me that she just realized that she was going around the bend. I mean, it was so stressful. She said, do you know what I did, sis? She got some lady who caters. So the lady would have boiled the pepper for, the pepper for a foriro, like you said. There's a way that the way it's made, the way it has to look. Pepper for stew. So this lady would have boiled the pepper, done the blending and everything. She says, sis, do you know what I'll do? Just about the time my husband is coming home, everything is all done, or everything is all cooked, or the foriro is there in the freezer. She said she will just get a bit of pepper, pour oil in it, put the locust bean, Iru, and so the odor is wafting in the house, and the man is like, She says after a while, she moves her pepper from the top of the butter. She comes the foriro from the freezer, warms it up, and gives it to the man, and the man is eating and is smacking his lips. And she says, who wants to die? Who wants to die? I mean, so she had to find a way that worked for her. But Nkiru, can I say this? Can we say you are able to do all these because you can afford it? It's not everybody who who has the financial capacity that you do that will be able to do this. Can we say it's just because you can do that?
So I agree. I agree that this tends to sound like a privileged advice, but I also think that the power of a singular focus is one that allows you anything that you want. Let me explain it. because when I want something, I focus on it very well in such a way that allows me get that. I feel like I could have built good alliances that would help me have dependencies that can help me. I had a friend who used to send her children home. My older son's best friend's parents, they used to send their children home with me, and I will bath them, clothe them. They'll pick them up in the house in the evening in pajamas, ready to go to bed because they're taking a bath, eating. And it was another friend of mine that said to me, Mbo, that's why they don't quarrel with you now, because you are their little crush. Obviously, she didn't say it in a good light, but what he then said to me is, if I needed to build a relationship with someone who I won't quarrel with, so that they can make my life easier, my singular focus is my life must be easy. It must work. I must have no stress. Stress from work is a lot. I must have no stress from home. I think that I'm ready to do a lot of things correctly to be able to get that support. I think.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that. Please, if you have questions, lady, can you just drop them in the chat room? We're almost. Nkiru can talk from now till next year. She's just an amazing person. She's loaded with so much. Nkiru, let me ask you. I mean, you've risen everywhere you've worked. You've done very well. The Lord has helped you and all. How were you able to deal with jealousy? Let me put it this way. So at a point, Nkiru and these ladies are all colleagues, they're all on the same level and all. And then Nkiru just shoots up. Before you know it, she's like 2 levels, 3 levels above them. How were you able to handle this? If I know very well, I'm sure there would have been some kind of envy, that have been a lot of, so how did you manage this really? As you do this, I'm going to turn my video off. My air conditioning unit has turned off, so I'd like to put it back on. But please go on, Nkiru, I can hold it.
Okay. Thanks, sis. I think that is great question. I think the first thing to say that there is nothing that I've accomplished in the place of work without the hand of God. And I didn't have the opportunity to tell my career story. When you hear it, you would know that it's a real Olowa Gbogboro, it's a real hand of God type of, career journey. But to the question that you asked, I think in many facets I've experienced it, and whether it's for me and a pair or it's for pairs and me. But I think the truth is, in a career ladder, the higher you go, the thinner the pyramid is. And if you think about how a pyramid is, there's only one tip, and therefore there will always only be one boss. I remember when a friend of mine, and she's a good friend of mine, Timisope, she was the first to make MD amongst our peers. And when I say I don't know, when we say peers, maybe 1 or 2 years older than you or in between, but the dress sizes come in size 12 to 14. So you're really mates in the end. But we started working for the same communication group in the same month, literally maybe 1 or 2 days apart. And she made MD before I did. And I was so enamored. And being enamored doesn't mean I didn't wonder, oh Lord, where is, my own? But, a few things that I illustrate with. Sister, I wear glasses and so do you. If I take out my prescription, I wear progressives and I give it to you, and you take out yours and give it to me, we're not going to be able to see. It doesn't matter how pretty, the glasses are. It says to me that everyone's career journey is unique to them. Everyone's life purpose is unique to them. And regardless of if you started as peers, you would have different milestones at different stages. And because this is real life, you may feel some envy, some jealousy. It reminds you that you are human. It reminds you that you are also watching the time for yourself. Of what point is it to get into a race without a time? Every time they say, Bagam, and you are running, there's a time. So mentally, we each have times, for us. But there are a few things you should do. When your friend is announced MD, you must give compliments. You must. pay compliments. It takes the attention from what you are feeling, takes it away, from you. I think that when you give these compliments, you should mean them. And I think that you should also pray for their good success, pray for their good, success. And I think you have to believe that God is in the neighborhood, for you. And I think that, you have to take your eyes off them and take it to the Lord. After all, if they could make you envy, they would have, but they can't. There's a Lord who will do it, for you. And I mean, I talk a few spiritual things, but I want to give you a few practical examples of managing jealousy. I think that you can decide how you take in the persons that you are, in quotes, concerned about. If it's social media, you can mute the pages, their posts for a while. So she's your friend, you see her in church, you see her. If you now decide to feast on her page from morning to night, it can advance you from green envy to red envy. So you mute the post and you deal with her in church. As you begin to feel better, you unmute the post and you are able to pay the compliments, pay compliments, pray and, generally be a part of those success. And I think that you need to speak to God about these. And I, in particular, I remember vividly someone who I thought was my peer had just been announced a really huge role that I thought would also have been, ideal for me. And I remember, because I make the point to say, I always say, go to God. And I sat there saying, dear God, in my vision book, this is what I'm reading. And I really felt, an impression saying, oh, you want their blessings all the time that they have problems. Do you also collect their problems? Do you really collect their problems? No. So what are you angling for? Stay in your lane and trust me, you will get what belongs to you. And I think that when the case is different, you've got to also try and find a balance. And let me explain it. There are people who would have wanted roles that I was announced into. There are people who were my peers and I became the lead person or the line manager. I think that you also have to be magnanimous, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't celebrate, but you've got to find a balance, also with your, celebration. I think that you have to be respectful. Anyone who has ever held a corporate position knows the story of the styrofoam cup. You don't know it, please find it and read it. I also posted it on my page. And you also know that positions are trans-century. So don't lose relationships, because these positions will be over and you need to go back to your old, to your relationships if you find them, valuable. I think just lastly, it's for you to understand, and I suppose it's easier, for me, that indeed time and chance happeneth, to different people. Today is your turn, it's going to be the next person's turn. No one has the monopoly of God's blessings. The rain shines, the sun shines, I beg your pardon, and the rain falls on the just and the unjust. So I'll stop there, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Nkiru. I was going to talk about your faith. Like you work in a corporate environment, not everybody, different religions, different beliefs, right? And so have you ever had a time, or have there been instances that you've had to take decisions that could compromise your faith? How did you deal with that? Because you're talking to your line manager, he's not a Christian, his point of reference is not the Bible. And so how are you able to communicate your faith without throwing it in their faces, without compromising your faith, and then leaving God out of the equation? Have there been instances like that?
So I think when I started out, I didn't speak about my faith in the place of work. I think unwittingly, if anything else, I used to be worried when people would say they were born again Christians at work, or when people would say I didn't come to work because I went for a night vigil. I worried. I didn't used to be obvious because I felt, there's a lot of times there will be dissonance between the profession of faith and the character, and I didn't want to be, call it self-preservation or self-righteousness. I didn't want to be involved in it. But as I grew up and I matured, I began to speak to myself, and I think what I wouldn't do is not miss an opportunity to speak about my faith. Would I speak about it proactively? I don't know, but as soon as the circumstances arise, I don't mind saying, speaking about my faith. In terms of values, I think that I have been fortunate to work in places where the values of the organization have aligned to my personal values. So I haven't had those sorts of struggles. Maybe socially, you see people would want to try to cross the borders with you once or twice. But I think that one of the things I learned quickly from a colleague of mine, it's interesting, it jumps out, it's Godfrey. When you arrive somewhere, you've got to let people know your values so they don't bring things to you. As an example, people won't crack lewd jokes around me. They're not even going to know how to crack it. You use the F word, what are we playing? People would want to cross the boundaries. Oh, let's try. We should come for a drink. Let's try and have an office husband. How do you play those type of jokes? There's no room for it. The demeanor so I think those sorts of things. Maybe you have one or two close shaves, but this is real life. You restate your stand and then you move on. So I think now I never miss an opportunity to speak about my faith. I didn't used to speak about it. If anything else, I used to shy away from it, but more confident, bolder, happy.
And I like that, really. You said, so what God did for you was in those times, those periods of your life, he guarded you. When the Bible says it will not allow you to be tempted above that which you can bear. So I think that's what God did for you. We have a lot of questions here. We're going to take questions, but before we take questions, Hannah will come up for about 5 minutes or thereabout to just talk to the executive diamonds. But let me ask you this last question, really. How do you manage to stay so pretty in Peru? What do you do for relaxation? How do you this is how I've known you now. I've known you now since Mommy was in that church in Okwebi.
It's over 12 years. At least.
Yes, and you're still. How do you do it, my darling? How do you relax? What do you do for relaxation? Just tell us. And you don't suffer burnout?
So I think that I suffer burnout, and I have suffered burnout. And a few signs of burnout is when I'm cranky and I'm very impatient. So I'm impatient with my children, and my whole body is itching, is biting. And one of the personal rules I make to myself is I will not be more respectful of my boss than I am of my husband. So once I start to get into that phase, I'm like, hey, I'm breaking my personal, rules and principles. So burnout is the reality, and I think that is really important to us to keep some parts of us for us, some parts of yourself for yourself, because you are giving out, different parts, of yourself to different people daily. You too, you deserve your own attention. You too deserve attention from yourself. It's not just that everyone is deserving, of you. And if you just think about the principles of baking bread, when you leave bread dough to rest, that's when it rises. Remember, before we then put it, in the oven. So it's important to receive those periods of rest. If you don't speak to your body proactively, your body will speak to you. My husband tells me all the time, your body, let's just be praying that your body doesn't speak to you, because I can do 1 million things, at the same time. So I think taking time for rest, and I always say, I say it on my platforms, that self-care is not about only about putting cucumbers on your eyes, facial mask and lying down. It's also about emptying your heart. It's also about not letting people, live rent-free in your mind. It's also about being deliberate and praying about offenses, because those are one of the things that can come and sit in your mind and make your mind heavy. And you may look well physically, but you're unwell, inside. So I think those are the sorts of, things that I do to help keep myself physically well. My mother is a plus size. My father is very slim. My older sister went to the plus size. My immediate older sister and I went to the slim side. So I cannot take credit for any weight loss or anything. I'm taking no credits.
Well done. Oh, thank you very much, Nkiru. It's been an interesting time with you. I saw a couple of questions there that I'm sure you'll be glad to speak to. Would like to have Hannah come up. Hannah?
Yes, all right. Thank you very much, Bisi. Oh my God, Nkiru, you're such a blast. My goodness. You see me typing copiously. Let me do this in 5 minutes, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you. Who are we? Executive Diamonds. I'm sure you saw that. And you're like, oh, these ladies are it again. Yes, we're a group of people. The intention is to nurture people to become executives, that is leaders, especially females, in your career, your chosen careers, and in your business, because you may be entrepreneurs running your business and you become really good at what you do. Yes, because that's even another leg altogether. We want to encourage you to do that if that is your dream. So this is from us. Titi is in the room. I was saying, Titi, we even felt you here. You here, baby. All right, I'm busy. I think the whole idea is the fact that we know that as executives, the tendency is really is very strong for you to do so much that you forget about yourself. So much that sometimes your social circles are broken. So much that the best is now the people you have, the people within your communities, if you even have time for those meetings, because when you really are into executive roles in career, those roles sink you and they use you. Don't let me use the word use you. They really stretch you, okay? You get the benefit, you get the benefits. But if you're not careful, some areas may suffer for too long. So the whole of Executive Diamonds is to help us mingle with ourselves, network outside of your current circle. I was going to ask Nkiru the difference between, she talked about the circle and she talked about circle, another word. Yeah, yes. So you need to be able to stretch out people across different industry groups and, same ladies at that level, and also have time to have fun and also then to learn from seniors, So we had our first outing sometime November last year. It was good. And I'm sure in the room, you've seen people introduce themselves as EDSO, Executive Lagbaja, Executive so and so. I'm running you through this. You can see I'm running fast because of time so that you can have time to really then do justice to some of the questions. We created an ambience that is really good for you. It was a weekend, Friday, Saturday, but this year it's going to be Thursday, Friday. It'll be Thursday afternoon till Saturday to Sunday to Saturday night, so that you can have time to then have those 2 days to yourself. For now, yes, within Nigeria, Sunday soon, we're going to, take it outside. And so we had an ambience that was so good. And then this is what I wanted, where I want to land. And then I'll show you a few pictures and we'll be fine. We asked people after the meeting to say, what's your overall impression? 9 out of them said it was very strong. And all the indices rate very well, except the issue, we had a slight issue with accommodation. Was the first time, which was resolved, and a few other people felt that the food, they wanted some more varieties, which was good. Feedback we had, most sessions were rated very high. You can see all the sessions, most of the sessions rated 70 something, 80 something, and no. The only session that was low is the session I should have taken, but we had a glitch and there I couldn't take that session. So they really didn't have that, 100% of the delegates said it met their expectation. And these are executives, you know, and they have very positive emotions expressed across locations, you know. 9 out of 10 said they would like to attend next year's edition. And it was a girls' affair. It was good. So we had the food, we had the network, we had one of the big part of it, which I think I need to speak to, is the kind of speakers we had in the room. Oh my, we had like 5 speakers. These ladies are people who are, they've gone through career, they've retired, but they're not tired. They are trailblazers. They are ladies, if you hear their names, you know that, oh, these are ladies you want to sit with, you want to learn from, you want to, even if they're not mentoring you directly, you're gleaning from their life, you know, and they're successful. And they were also very, we had a Chatham rule where we were very, what's the word? I'm looking for the word we use. You see, we're vulnerable. We were very vulnerable. They were very vulnerable. They will tell you things that, you know, you won't hear outside, because you see all the blinks and all the fine things. And you're like, I want to be like Nkiru. I want to be like Hannah. I want to be like BC. These people have it all together. Na lie. There are issues, there are areas. And in this meeting, well, if you were in the room, if I still have some EDs in the room, if you are there, please, can you come in the chat room and bear me out? Tell me yes or no. The directions we went, these ladies, they taught it all out, and they will make you also feel like, thank God. Because sometimes you think you are the only person carrying the can. All right, and that has a way of really becoming a disincentive. But when you know that, oh, even the person I'm looking up to has gone through this and came out, or is still battling with this, I can continue to trend on knowing that there is an answer for me. So, yes, so I just had to rush this. I think I'm not sure we'll have enough time for, let me stop. But what I'll do is to quickly drop in here now, I'll drop in here a form. If you feel that, I can share some pictures. We have a lot of beautiful pictures. And then we danced. I hope Timothy will be able to put that dance up. It was good. Anyway, let me leave you. Then please, BC, let's go back. Thank you. Thank you for the time out, yes.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you. Well done. Nkiru, so what I've done is I've done a screenshot of some of the questions, and then I'll just run through some of them, and then you take them if that's fine with you. Okay, so I have this question here. I'd like to know how one repairs a work relationship that has been strained as a result of a conflict or misunderstanding. Did you get that? Should I go on, or would you like to take that first?
So how do you repair a relationship that has been broken based on conflicts at work? Can we take the second one? I'll do 2 at a time.
Okay, secondly, I'd like to know what to do to watch out for when seeking a work mentor or coach, coach. You know, you mentioned that about finding some person to, so you can take those 2 and then I'll go on.
Okay. Look, I think that a broken relationship can be very sad, but I think it's just also based on an understanding of what type of conflict it is. You haven't given us details, so we're going to make assumptions. If it is a conflict that, you know, arose based on differences in opinion, that's all right. While in the marketplace, when you go to buy, in the shop or in the open market, you don't always agree pricing, you differ. You know, so it's fine, but it looks to me like this was a lot more. And I think if it's a lot more, I think that communication is important. Asking the person for coffee and explaining your perspective. When people feel like they've been heard, listening to the person's perspective, it allows, you know, them at least to come to the area of a neutral ground. It brings them out of the conflict zone, leaves them in the neutral ground. It may not take them across to your own end. And I think that because people are also human, you can do a few of the usuals, which is send a note of apology, a card of apology. I think it's also remember when the person's important dates are, don't miss them. A birthday, a Thanksgiving, whatever, don't miss them. But I think it's also the openness of heart to realize that the relationship may never be mended, and you should be able to live with that. Because remember, you can do all you can, but the prerogative is on the other person to forgive, to want to move on, or to want to make it right. And if the person is not keen, that's all right. Just learn to live with it. So I think that would be my first response to the first question. The second question is, what should you look out for in a mentor? I think the first thing is the values, and I think the person's journey. The values, do the values align to the values that you are seeking? That's very important. And then two is, just also the person's journey. I often say that a mentor is somebody who sometimes you borrow his leg to be able to complete your journey. So is that person the type of leg you'd like to borrow? Does that align, to that? And is somebody who's worth the journey sometimes, either that you would like to go or that you can glean lessons from that person's journey that would help you on your journey. I've seen a lot of people who set off wanting to find mentors, but ultimately they're looking for friends. When I used to run huge mentorship circles, when you enter my class, in fact, I was thinking a few days ago and thinking maybe I was a bit tough, but you get into my class, I say to you, I'm not your friend. We're here for a journey. When that journey is concluded, we may decide if we want to be friends, but can we focus? But I'm finding that when people approach you to say, can you mentor me? They're actually looking for friendship. I have someone who was my mentee for many years, who we've graduated from mentor-menteeship into being family friends, husband, connecting, mother, at Igogwe. That took time, but it was also composure and a lot of wisdom. I credit her with a lot of the gifts of wisdom, if nothing else, to be able to navigate the relationship to that. So understand if there's an alignment in values, understand if that person's journey is relatable, if there's something from that journey that you need from yours, and understand that you're not friends. If it graduates to friends, amazing, but that's not what you're going into the relationship for. Thank you.
Let me take this. So there's this question here that says, was there a time in your career journey that your spouse and his family or his family were jealous? Were they always happy at the fact that you were rising? Were there times your spouse didn't support and felt like you didn't have enough time for him and the children?
That's a very important question. And my husband's family has a lot of successful people, so I don't know how I clicked in the equation of success or rising higher. They have a lot of people who are forging their different careers and getting ahead. And to your question,
so you were not intimidated?
No, I wasn't, can't have been. I think to your question, yes. I remember a time where, as lovely as my mother-in-law was, I said to my husband, can we please not have any mother come again? Why? Because I'll come back from London this week. I'm going again next week. I'll come back from New York. I'm going away. And I reasoned within myself that it doesn't matter how angelic anyone is, they're going to, in their quiet moments, wonder, what type of wife is this?
Sit down one place.
They are seeing this wife. So I remember telling him, you know what, honey? And obviously I didn't want it to be one-sided like my mother, like his mother. Can all the mothers take a break for now? Let's just manage ourselves. I think that my husband has been incredibly generous with his time, incredibly generous with his time towards me, and very supportive. I think that what that has done for me is that it has made me heavily burdened to show up for him in return. And what do I mean by that? The things that are important to him, I will show up for, because this is someone who supports me, in my career. And whatever it is that is important, a family function, this, that, I will show up. With my children, every time, I think there was someone, every time when my children were young that they had, maybe they fell or they were running a temperature, I felt like such a terrible mom. You know, I'm like, Kai Osana Bwa. Maybe if I was here, they won't have fallen. But the truth is, toddlers fall. That's what they do in real life. And I remember when was it my first or my second? I can't remember which one, but one of them at 4 months, I think I also felt in the course of my career that there were things I needed to prove to myself. So I had gone to New York when my first son was 4 months. And I had taken bottles, you know, those bottles and things to pump. And when I came back, he didn't want, in fact, he just rejected the breast, the whole breast, like take your breast, your milk, take it away, I'm not interested. And shortly after, he had an infection and I went to the hospital. I don't know how they would teach Nigerian nurses about prejudice. Madam, so are you breastfeeding? Hey, I say, God, how will I answer this one now? Is it present continuous tense for breastfeeding or did you breastfeed? Which one will I answer? Because this baby is very small, 4 months, he should still be on breast. I was just looking. But you know, the judgment, the level of judgment from their demeanor. Hey, I say, Father, next time if I go somewhere, they ask, are you breastfeeding? I think I will say yes, because this judgment is about to kill me. But I think those little things, when the child then has fever, you go into, you're thinking, hey, it's because I was not, you know, if he didn't stop this breast now. In fact, my closest friend in the UK was telling me that for my second son, I nearly breastfed him since he was 1,000 years. I said, really, me, that I like to be a chick? She said, yes, you can't remember, you breastfed him, I used to be ashamed. So I said, maybe it was because of the incidents with the first one. And I decided that you will see this breast, you'll be tired. So I think, yes, I did used to feel guilty.
Thank you. Okay, it's been an interesting time here. Someone says, what would you do if you had to appraise your boss? How would you go about this?
Oh, if I had to appraise my boss, is it like in a 360-degree appraisal, or are you now making me the boss of my boss?
Maybe a 360-degree. He didn't quite say. He says, what would you do if you had to appraise your boss?
So if you're doing a 360, like the organizations do a 360, I think that is important to be honest. I say so because every leader has a blind spot. I remember the day I was feeling very generous and I asked my team, oh, let's have a 360-degree. Please, let's appraise me. Have you seen when they gave me the appraisal, I really cried. So today I can never forget the comments. The person said, because I said it had to be anonymous, you have to stop having a teacher's pet. When I gathered them, I said, what is a teacher's pet? They said, you have a favorite. I said, who is the favorite? They said, so and so, always coming to your desk before the close of work. I had never thought of it. So I say that to say that feedback is a gift. So please, if you have an opportunity to appraise your boss, appraise them respectfully. Give them the gift of a feedback, because every leader has a blind spot. It turns out when I examined it that I was always laughing with this particular person. I love to laugh, and the person had a great sense of humor. And will come to my table and I'll be laughing, kwakata, kwakata, kwakata. And the other people are thinking, this is her pet. So please, by all means, appraise your boss, be honest, be respectful, but feedback is a gift. Gift it to your boss.
Thank you. So this person, Dr. Abiola Salami, says, Mrs. Nkiru Olumide-Ojo, delivering awesomeness since 1622. How old are you, Nkiru?
Don't mind, Abiola.
Says, well done, ma. I think there's just one more before we go. I think you've spoken to this. Someone says, how do you manage difficult, uncooperative people? You must have spoken to it at some point, or would you just like to say a word or two?
Look, I've had 2 uncooperative people, a difficult team member and a difficult boss. The difficult boss made me lose weight. The difficult boss drew me closer to Christ. The difficult boss helped me to learn scripture. The difficult boss helped me to pay attention to details. I think I say this to say that it's a tough environment to have a difficult boss, but the outcomes for you are always good in the end. And obviously, except you're being physically abused or emotionally or psychologically abused, but the outcomes I have found, because this boss was so unkind to me, I could never, I used to have a 2 pairs of eyes theory. I could not have a presentation without 2 pairs of eyes having looked at it, because fear of what the boss could say. So I had to have 2 people look at it back to back, which would improve your attention to details. The boss made me hugely uncomfortable, so I would cry out to the Lord a lot of times. I've had very difficult team members. When I was younger, I would be more abrasive in dealing with the issues. But as I got older, there are tons of ways, for which I would use to manage the difficult team member. And I had a member of, one of the teams I worked with. She's turned to a big time event manager. And I had an event in December, and she was managing the event for me. And she was so stellar. And I said to her, your own is a bit much. What's going on? So she laughed. She said, you don't know the high blood pressure you used to give me. So I think
the right training for you, right?
Yes.
Wow, thank you very much, Nkiru. It's been an interesting time. I didn't think it was going to be anything less than what you have done. I feel we'll leave you to it. You will have so much to say from now till, I'm sure we definitely will be having you come back. Just your parting word to everybody listening right now. What would you say, Nkiru Olumide? I like that bit I heard. I'll never respect my boss more than I respect my husband. That's really deep, really.
No, there's no need for it. People are paying obeisance to their bosses, and then they come home and they treat their spouses with disdain. And this is a spouse who lives with you, who cares for you, is interested in your well-being. So I think that your partner, whether the choice of partner before you engage, you get into a relationship, is very critical. Who it is that you settle with is very important. How you manage your spouse and manage your family is very important, because all of the work goes away and these are the people that you come home to. I think the second thing to say that each one of us must learn how to get out of our own way. Each one of us must learn how to get out of our own way, whether it's the limitations that we have set, unwittingly for ourselves in our minds, or it is the habits, that we embody or that we live by. And I hear people, because my mentorship and coaching session, people would come to me and not be aware that they are the problem that is precluding themselves from making advancement, because they don't have a high sense of awareness. They don't know. And I keep saying, I'm so glad you were not praying prayers like die by fire, so that you're not the one who dies. So learn to get out of, your own way, and have a high level of self-awareness. I think, is back, my last comment is back to the source. And I think that when you think about the challenges, I've talked about life being a series of battle and blessings. When you think about the challenges of life, you realize that you need a higher source. You realize that you need an anchor. And it's so important that you find that anchor. That is the anchor, like the itsy bitsy spider. When the sun comes, the rain falls. That is what holds you, down, like the ship. The last thing that I want to say is about each person being a lighthouse. Wherever each one of us are right now is a prayer point and a destination for another person. So as you journey, learn to send down the ladder as you rise for the next person. Learn to make a contribution to another person. It doesn't matter how small. Learn to leave someone more improved than you have met them. Whether it's a compliment, whether it's a know-how, you always have something to offer. Be the lighthouse. Thank you so much, sis.
Thank you very much, Nkiru. So what I'd like to ask you all on this call right now is, have we left you better off than where we met you? And I can say for myself, absolutely yes. Thank you. Nkiru, it's been an amazing time with you, and quite enjoyable, insightful as well. And I loved the humor. It made it quite real. You know, the openness, the ability for you to be vulnerable. I like the God factor in your life, really, because a lot of us, we leave God out of the equation of our lives. And it's so nice to hear that God is the source, the one that you have found and the one you go back to, so you have your peace with God. So on behalf of Hannah and Associates and the Executive Diamonds, we'd like to say a big thank you to you, Nkiru, for this time.
My true pleasure and honor. Thank you so much. Thank you, sis Anna. Thank you for being a lighthouse. Thank you, for driving this, and thank you for lighting another woman's candle. Thank you, sis BC, for what has been a great moderation. Thank you, the audience, for all the comments, questions, views, and builds. It has been such a true pleasure and honor to have been, and I will connect further. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Can I say this? She didn't ask me to, but I think you should follow Nkiru on Instagram. She's quite consistent with her posts, and there's so much I've learned following her. She's just Nkiru Olumide-Ojo on Instagram. You should follow her. And then from there, you probably would learn more from her, because everything she has said and more, I think she posts like 4 or 5 times a week. And I believe that takes some level of discipline for you to be able to do that. Thank you very much. It's been a nice time here.
Just before you leave,
and so I'm going to have Hannah come up and close the meeting.
Basically, you're not dropping. Okay, I was going to do this and go, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. And to Nkiru, do you know, at some point, I'll drop this, that Nkiru was she was my client at some point. I hope you remember that, Nkiru. She was leading the communication team that was at Virgin Atlantic. You were in Virgin. Was it Virgin Nigeria? Anyway.
Maybe it was Virgin Nigeria. I can't remember, but one of them, yes. Yeah.
One of those, and she was leading the team. I had moved as a GM in a PR agency then, out of curiosity, so really I can relate to everything you spoke, and I'm sure most of the ladies, if not everybody here, can relate, because we all want to be the best we can be, and you've been vulnerable. Thank you. You've said it all. We love you, Nkiru. You're a super lady. We love you. Brain and the beauty. Thank you. Everyone in the room, thank you. Those on YouTube, yes, they are there. And they've been following, putting out their chatting there, and all our senior colleagues in the room, thank you. We'll come back to you again. If you have filled the form, then we can then reach you again. By God's grace, this comes up on a quarterly basis. So we're going to have another person that is like Nkiru, who will be outspoken, vulnerable, and teach us something. But above all, the Executive Diamonds, we have a program coming up, the weekend out. It's going to come up sometime in May. So if you're interested, it's a training. We call it we present it as work-life balance to corporate organizations, and they actually enlist. I mean, the last session we had it all well, with many people enlisting people. Many organizations enlisting their ladies for that meeting. So if you're a lady here and you reach out to us, we can help you package that proposal so that you can have your HR. You can have the HR. Put you on this program. So thank you, everyone. Nkiru, love you.